With the Colts on a bye this week, let's look ahead to some offseason needs and maybe a big change coming at linebacker this offseason. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your favorite film nerd over at horseshoehuddle.com. And my bespectacled boots on the ground. Darn, I was practicing for weeks on that one there. Bespectacled boots on the ground. Jake Arthur is here as well. He's also of horseshoehuddle.com fame. We are here talking about team needs for the Indianapolis Colts this upcoming offseason, or heck, maybe the rest of the season. Look, it's the Colts bye week. We're going to take some time to really look at big picture stuff. So when it comes to team needs, we're going to talk about the need at running back behind Jonathan Taylor. I mean, they desperately need one there. We're going to talk about how the Colts need to do everything in their power to get a real tight end in the room this offseason, whether that's a draft and or free agency. But first, Jake, let's start a little bit, I don't want to say hot takey, but let's talk a little bit spicy here with linebacker. Now, I know there are differing opinions on the Colts linebacker room because if you look at just the counting stats, they're both up. The two starters, Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, are among the best in football when it comes to tackles. They get some splash plays here and there with forced fumbles and sacks and do all the right things in those areas. But just from people who watch the games on Sundays to sites like Pro Football Focus who go beyond the stats and grade, there's something not working here with this Colts linebacker room. And for our money, at least on this show, there needs to be some kind of change when it comes to who is starting at linebacker. Maybe not at both spots next year, but at least at one of the starting spots. Do you agree, Jake?
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. So often you look at, the Colts run, you could say run defense or pass defense, pick your poison there. In the run defense, running backs are getting to the second level and, the defensive tackles are occupied, but there's, a wide gap there. Where are your linebackers? They're not there. They're getting run past. They're either stuck on the block or they've overrun in pursuit. They're just not there. In pass coverage, that's been a problem forever. Basically, ever since Shaquille Leonard was at his peak, that was the last time they were able to defend the middle of the field. But it's just become a real problem. I mean, we saw what it was like early in the season, 200 plus yards per game on the ground first couple weeks. They made some changes to that and got fixed a little bit. But teams are still able to run a bit on them. It's not like the problem is totally cured. We've seen what it was like against, the Lions do this to everybody, but like how they were able to throw over the middle of the field. It's just predictably poor. You know what I mean? Again, against the run, against the pass. They've locked into Zaire Franklin. They gave him a contract extension. And I'm not going to say he's not a starting level player. Like he absolutely is. But with this team, maybe there's just too much of an onus put on him. And then when you combine him with EJ Speed, two guys who have very similar deficiencies in their game, it just creates obvious areas of attack for opposing offenses. And it's just, it's a big problem. They do have an opportunity this offseason, though, to kind of right some wrongs that they've done, especially with the linebacker room. I don't really blame them for the Bobby Okereke stuff happening, how it did when it comes to free agency. But I think they're at another pivotal point this year. So the only linebackers they have under contract going into next season are Zaire Franklin and Jalen Carlisle. EJ Speed is a free agent, and the rest of your depth is as well. Grant Stewart, Shegu Alubi, Cam McGrone, Liam Anderson, Austin Agiaki, guys on the practice squad. Those guys are not under contract next year. Just because you've started a guy and he's given you some good football, I know you want to reward your homegrown guys. I get it. But that's how you get yourselves into situations like they're in right now. There's just going to have to be some tough conversations had, and they're going to have to hurt feelings. They're going to have to hurt their own feelings with how, how they approach free agency and who gets to come back and who doesn't. But linebacker's just not been good enough, and it's a pretty important position in this defense.
Yeah, one thing I will add is if Gus Bradley is back next season, which I'm not sure he will be, but if Gus Bradley is back next season, you can't return these two guys as your starting linebackers. For the Gus Bradley defense to work, you need a playmaker over the middle of the field. You look at his best defenses in his career, you go back to Legion of Boom days. Obviously, they had two top safeties in football, and they had Bobby Wagner at linebacker, a great coverage backer who could move side to side and be a great run defender. You go to his Chargers days, he had Derwin James at safety and had that playmaker there. So it kind of made up for the fact that they didn't have playmakers at linebacker. And even when they didn't have playmakers at linebacker, they had guys who would kind of cover, like Drew Tranquill and Kaiser White. The Colts don't have a playmaker at safety or a coverage guy at linebacker right now. And I think it's easier to find a coverage linebacker than it is to find like a true playmaker at safety. So that's where I think the Colts need to really address this offseason. To add some stats to what we're saying here, though, I mean, again, Pro Football Focus is not everything. But out of 16 qualifying Colts defenders this year, Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed ranked 13th and 15th, respectively, among the Colts qualifying defenders there. In coverage, Franklin has a 48.7 grade. EJ Speed has a 44.5, which are the two worst on the team in coverage. And they're also outside the top 70 among NFL linebackers in coverage, and that's out of 85. So 73rd for Franklin, 82nd for EJ Speed. EJ Speed also leads the NFL in missed tackles this year with 20. I mean, here's the thing, man. I'm going to bring my retail life into this a little bit. I always say this about managers in retail. You can either be mean and effective at your job, or you can be really nice and ineffective at your job. That's all I care about if you're a manager. You can, if you're going to be bad, at least have some redeeming quality. So when it comes to like linebackers, to bring that analogy back here, you can either be good in coverage and just kind of soft against the run and get washed out against the run, or you can be great thumper in the run game that finishes tackles and doesn't miss tackles and be a bad coverage guy. And then you're a fine starter that way with those deficiencies. But you can't be bad in coverage and miss tackles. Just like with the retail manager, you can't be mean and bad at your job. You can't be missing tackles and can't cover. And that's kind of where we're at with at least one of these two starters at linebacker. I do think Zaire Franklin can be a fine second linebacker if you have a good coverage guy next to him or a good thumper next to him, but you can't have two deficiencies right there at linebacker. So I do think the Colts need to upgrade next to Zaire Franklin this offseason. And like you said, I mean, we're both on the assumption that Chris Ballard will be back and he'll be the one making the decisions this offseason. You guys can go crazy in the comment section on that right there. But Chris Ballard has this tendency to reward in-house guys for just adequate play, or just getting up to an adequate level. And he rewards them by continually starting them and continually getting them back with little opportunity to be usurped by anybody on the roster. It's time to make that change, man. It really is time to make the change. We're watching this Colts run defense be atrocious despite having two of the top defensive tackles in football in run defense, good edge rushers in run defense. These linebackers are just not getting it done in the run game. They've been liabilities in the passing game for years. They need to make a change at linebacker. I mean, I'm not saying that both of them need to go, but certainly the one that is a free agent this upcoming offseason, it's time to make the change there.
Yeah, I think you have to take that opportunity to upgrade. And I mean, if we're talking about complementary styles, Zaire Franklin is a decent run defender, but a bad pass defender. Well, the inverse of that is right there in front of their eyes. Jalen Carlisle actually ranked, according to PFF, as their top graded linebacker in tackling, 79.5, and their best in coverage at 82. He's their number 2 linebacker overall, behind ALIE, actually. But he ranks last among the linebackers in run defense. Now, again, that's a smaller sample size because the guy's been on IR for a little bit. But he's a guy, before he went out, we did see him getting a little better all the time. Like, I felt he was getting kind of out-muscled early in the year, and then the run defense never quite caught up, but you could see him clicking and closing and reacting pretty quickly when it came to pass defense. Now, if they're going to wash this all out and upgrade through free agency. Is there anyone you got your eyes on?
Yeah, real quick. I mean, Robert Spillane from the Raiders. He's not great in coverage, but one of the best tacklers in football at the position. Really smart, heady guy. And he can
Playmaker.
it can allow Zaire Franklin to be more of a run and chase guy if Spillane is behind him, cleaning things up. Ernest Jones, a pretty good coverage backer, not the best in run defense, but he's a guy who I feel comfortable in the coverage drops. And then if they do keep Gus Bradley and you want to have some familiarity with him, you can go with a Divine Diablo or a Kaiser White, two guys who have struggled this season, but they at least understand this system more so than what the Colts linebackers are currently showing that they understand in the system. So there are avenues for the Colts to upgrade, but we are talking about free agency. Does free agency exist when it comes to this general manager? Probably not. So we shall see.
We shall see. Exactly right. All right. So coming up next, we are going to talk about basically the offensive counterpart to this whole argument, the tight end group. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price that you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. But with Mint Mobile, you will never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. My current wireless provider, who shall go unnamed, they keep raising their prices, and it's actually on my to-do list to call them and threaten them that I will give them the stanky boot if they don't fix this thing. But, I wouldn't have to do that with Mint Mobile. I trust Ryan Reynolds and Mint Mobile with my wireless coverage. Might trust him with my life. See, Zach, Ryan Reynolds used to run Mint Mobile, and now he's folks. It's a whole thing. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. That's obviously very clutch. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabits on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
And also, guys, Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. With as few as 4 correct picks, Prize Picks is the best way to get on the action in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineup stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, Locked On Colts every day as we're back talking about team needs going into the offseason, or heck, with this next team need for the rest of the season. Honestly, at this point, just get somebody else in there because obviously we are transitioning to the tight end room. What is going on at tight end here, Jake? I mean, the Colts have virtually gotten no production in the receiving game from their tight ends this season. And this is a group that, I don't want to say we were super optimistic about coming into the offseason, but I don't think we envisioned it being this bad when it came to their production this year. Because, look, guys like Kylan Granson had produced in the past. Guys like ALIE-COX had flashes. Drew Ogletree had positive flashes last season, especially with Anthony Richardson. And Will Mallory even had some good moments last year. But if we go to what we're seeing this season, ALIE-COX has probably been their best overall player, which we even said in the offseason would be a horrible sign for the rest of the guys.
Yep.
Drew Ogletree's been good in the run game, but a non-factor in the passing game. Kylan Granson has disappeared completely. and we're at the point where he probably shouldn't be getting offensive snaps anymore. And then Will Mallory is back to being a game day inactive. Oh yeah, and then Jelani Woods is somewhere. Like he's not part of the picture this year, but we'll see if he ever is in the future. So this tight end room, Jake, needs a major facelift in the offseason. I mean, maybe Drew Ogletree you keep, but besides that, you almost just reset the entire positional room.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, going into this thing under contract next year, you have Ogletree, Mallory, and Woods. Woods obviously has spent the last 2 years of his career injured, had the hamstrings 2 years ago, had the foot this year. Ogletree is a guy. I mean, he's one of the rare guys on your team that is able to catch and block. I mean, doesn't neither necessarily do either at a super high level, but he's serviceable as a somewhat do-it-all tight end. Mallory, I hope for more from him coming in this year. I mean, you said we weren't super optimistic, but I'll be honest, I was. I thought the tight end room was going to be a lot better. Again, at the time, Jelani Woods was still healthy. Drew Ogletree, I thought, could take a step. I thought Will Mallory could take a big step. But that just hasn't happened. We did say that if Mo ALIE-COX and Kylen Granson were your starters going into the year, it would be disaster. They've been your starters throughout the year, and guess what? The tight end position doesn't exist in the passing game on this team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they got to do something. Statistically, let's back it up here. Out of 111 qualifying NFL tight ends, Pro Football Focus has Ogletree ranked 46th, Mo ranked 50th, Mallory 71st, and Granson 97th in receiving. So among catching the ball as a tight end, the Colts tight ends are all near the bottom. They're in the bottom half. So they've got to do something. I mean, this seems like one glaring area of the offense where it's like if they just had a real decent player here, it could be a game changer. And it doesn't have to be a big time difference maker. It could be I don't know how you equate it, but like it doesn't have to be your leading receiver, but like just someone who could contribute at the level of like an Alec Pierce or something, where like could be your third receiver. But like right now, the Colts tight ends are like 5th, 6th, 7th leading receiver guys. You know what I mean? And this is a team that really emphasizes the downfield play, and they thought they had guys who could do that. If they were capable of doing that, this would be a pretty dangerous offense. But it's just such a glaring need that could take this offense to the next level and maybe even out some of the crazy highs and lows in the passing game. Like if there was just some consistent tight end play, that could probably help immensely.
Yeah, and it's hard to sit at this point in the season and not wonder what life would be like if they had been able to trade up for Brock Bowers come draft day. Like, what would this offense look like with Brock Bowers, who is arguably the best tight end in football this season? Arguably the best tight end in football. In his rookie season, he might hit 1,000 yards. I think that'd be like a rookie record. I mean, maybe Kyle Pitts hit that.
Tight ends take a while to develop.
Yeah,
not
and
him,
he's looking like a stud. So
yeah,
it's hard to not look at what could have been if they would have been able to make that trade to move up, because obviously they were kind of interested in going up there. But the reality of this situation is, look, you can make a tight end room work with the sum of their parts. If all the parts together can make a good tight end, then you're fine. But I think the problem is when you're looking at this tight end room right now, do all the parts together make a good tight end? No, they don't. All the parts together make a bad tight end because you have zero receiving threat in the room right now. Like your best receiver at the position is probably Will Mallory, who, like, he's fine. Like he can catch the ball at least, but he's not really going to get open or create after the catch.
The Colts don't feel good enough about him for him to be a consistent, active player on game days. I mean,
yeah, Mo does his thing. He can barely move, but he's a good blocker. Drew Ogletree, good blocker, but just doesn't have consistent hands. And then Kylen Granson, like I said, probably shouldn't be on the field anymore at this point. But you don't have any other options. So the Colts are like really losing out at that tight end position right now. They need a guy. They need a legit player at that position this offseason. I don't think it's going to come in free agency. Like I have a couple of names here, like a Zach Ertz or a Tyler Conklin would be upgrades, but I don't think they're anything massive. Like they'd probably just be guys here as well. Maybe you could swing a trade for a Dawson Knox from the Buffalo Bills. They're already paying, or they already have Dalton Kincaid. So maybe if they want to help their cap space a little bit, you can get Dawson Knox. But ideally, the Colts need to take a tight end pretty high in the draft.
Yeah.
And we know Chris Ballard likes the trenches. Maybe we can just convince him that a tight end is a trench player because they're kind of on the trenches, but Tyler Warren from Penn State, Colston Loveland from Michigan. I know there's a lot of people who I think it's a Central Michigan tight end as well. There's a Texas tight end that it's supposed to be a really good tight end draft class.
Yeah.
Just get somebody in here who can get open and catch the ball because the Colts right now have tight ends who can't catch contested passes. They're one of their best receivers at the position. Kylan Granson has a 22% drop rate this season. And honestly, that's probably being a bit generous with some of the passes that have been kind of close to him. So the Colts just need to reset the position. And maybe the wild card was say you draft Tyler Warren in round 1, and then you get the wild card of Jelani Woods coming back and he actually stays healthy. Then you could go from this being a major liability to an actual strength next season. But you got to address it with some real capital, whether that's in the draft or making a big move in free agency. They need to get something legit in the room this offseason.
Yeah, and I don't want it to seem like the Colts didn't try because there were reports they tried to get up in the top 10. I believe that's actually been substantiated. I'm fairly confident Brock Bowers was one of a couple targets there, and then he got sniped right in front of them. And you're never settling for when you get the top pass rusher in the draft in Latu. But they had a couple opportunities to go get Brock Bowers, and it just didn't work out. So that sucks for them. It's a what if, but not for lack of trying. But now they have to put effort into it. They can't just be like, wouldn't that be good if we got this guy? They have to make it happen now. So whoever they really fall in love with, give Shane Steichen a good tight end, and let's see how it works. Because historically, his offenses have been really good when he has a tight end that he likes. They clearly don't have that now. But coming up next, guys, we're going to talk about one that maybe doesn't get as much attention, but it definitely is a need next year. All right, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers, you guys can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets back if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So normally it's a spot where we tell you what FanDuel's thinking for the week ahead. Let's look at what they think about the Colts' playoff chances. So their chances of missing the playoffs, FanDuel has them at -225. So they do not look optimistic. It's +18 to make them. So do with that information what you will, and go ahead and tell FanDuel what you think about that. If you're rooting really hard for them to make the playoffs, then see if you can make some money by dumping some in there. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Zach. So do you know what all running backs are under contract for 2025?
Of course I know. You have it in the script right in front of me, Jake. So obviously it's Jonathan Taylor is under contract for this upcoming offseason.
Just Taylor.
And that's it. Now, a couple of the other guys are, like Tyler Goodson, they have restricted rights on Tyler Goodson. Yeah. And with him playing gunner these past couple weeks and being a kick returner and doing a lot of special teams, I'd be very, very shocked if he's not back after this season. But the rest of the guys, man, I think it's another room where aside from Taylor and a special teamer, you reset the whole room. And maybe this is the real macro conversation we need to have about this is why we have so many rosters right here, so many roster spots right here, Jake, that we're saying you need to reset the whole room. We're in year 8 or whatever of Chris Ballard, and we're saying reset this room, reset this room, reset this room. That's what the theme of this podcast has been today. And honestly, I don't know how many people are going to disagree with us. Besides Jonathan Taylor, you've got nothing out of running back this year. And Goodson you keep because of the gunner ability and the special teams. He's a good RB3 or 4 to have, but you don't have anyone to take off pressure from him in that running back room right now. And I know he's your highly paid guy and you're going to feed him more, but you got to get somebody who can kind of play behind him, especially in the horrible situation where he gets hurt. You got to have somebody who can kind of play, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if the past few years have taught us anything, it's that Jonathan Taylor's still very good, but he is starting to show some wear and tear there. And even beyond that, you can just say you could say you want more than just insurance and backup for Jonathan Taylor. 1-2 punches in the NFL are coming back with the increased usage in cover two defenses and everything. Teams are running the ball more. You look at, Detroit's got Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Green Bay's doing it with Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson. Atlanta, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier. The Buccaneers, they did not invest heavily, but they've got a good thing going with Bucky Irving and Rashad White. Buffalo, James Cook and Ray Davis. So it doesn't take super valuable resources to get a nice 1-2 punch. Those were all teams that have 2 running backs in the top 50 of rushing right now. That's several teams that have 2 running backs doing really, really well. I mean, just look at last year. When Jonathan Taylor came back, him and Zach Moss were an awesome 1-2 punch. Now, Taylor's usage started to kind of flush Zach Moss out, and the Colts, weren't able to pony up to bring Moss back, but we've seen it work. And I mean, Jonathan Taylor is kind of one of those build-up runners where you got to give him carries throughout the game. But I think it's very clear this offense needs to be run-based. Pass when you need to, but if you're going to have so much emphasis on the downfield passing attack, Anthony, Jonathan Taylor, and player X needs to be a heavy focus in the run game. So again, if not just for insurance, to have someone attack this thing with Anthony and Jonathan Taylor, I think that would be big going into next year. And I mean, there's some decent running backs in this next class. I mean, obviously, they're not going to go for Genti or anyone like that, but there's some decent guys coming in. I think the free agent class is shaping up to be a nice one as well. So there's going to be options.
Yeah, and the thing for me too is when you're really looking at this Colts running back room, it's not that they, it's not like you're looking for another bell cow behind them. Like that would be awesome to have another guy who could actually start games at running back if you need them to, because of Taylor's injury history. You probably do need to look in that, but they also kind of need a receiving back as well. Like obviously you'd want Tyler Goodson to be that guy, but with his hands, he hasn't shown the ability that he can be that. Jonathan Taylor has his own issues in pass protection and with catching the ball. Had a nice touchdown catch this past week, but besides that, it's been pretty hit or miss with him. So you could really go so many different ways. Like if you want to go, again, I'm using this as an archetype example, not as a player, but like if you want to add like a Jahmyr Gibbs type, a guy who is the lightning to Jonathan Taylor's thunder, and be more of a rotational type back, that works. That's perfectly fine. So I think the North Carolina back would be an awesome fit there. I can't remember his name right now because I haven't done a ton of draft work yet. But, if you want to take him in like round 2 or 3, whatever, like, and go just high end, have a top tier running game, go grab him. But also, if you just need like a pass catcher or a guy who can work on third downs, like a Nyheim Hines type, like the Colts had when Hines was here, that would work too. Just get somebody else in the room that can play on Sundays. Because look, Trey Sermon's a good pass protector. That's probably about it at this point. I mean,
he's not creating a bunch by himself.
You
want someone more than who's going to just be following his blocks and getting what the line provides. Like, get someone who can create their own yardage.
He's kind of like the ALIE-COX at running backs. Like, he's fine-ish, but like you preferably want something with a little bit more juice there.
Yeah.
He's more of a coach's friend because he does like that little thing that you like very much, but he doesn't really bring much juice on Sundays. And they just need more explosion and more juice on this offense. Like they have the juice at wide receiver. They have, if A.D. Mitchell ever figures out how to catch the ball, they have A.D. Mitchell. They have Alec Pierce. They have Josh Downs. They need something at tight end and running back aside from Jonathan Taylor. They need somebody who can add to this offense because right now everything's going through the wide receivers. And then the run game, it's just Taylor and Richardson. They don't have anyone else who could even come in for like a play or two really right now. So they need to add more to this offense in terms of skill position players. I think they will this offseason. I mean, the Colts, for how they are aggressive, I'm not saying that they are aggressive in terms of addressing needs, but for how they are aggressive, they were kind of aggressive this past offseason, adding a guy like an A.D. Mitchell and getting Anthony Gould and getting other players. So like they did add a little bit to skill position this past offseason, but it needs to be another step up from where Ballard typically is. And I don't know if he will do that, but it needs to be at like, tight end probably needs a veteran in there who can actually play some football along with a rookie. Running back might need the same thing, or a veteran and a rookie in there just to add more options in the offseason, more competition in the offseason. And I don't know if we're going to get that much from Ballard. If we know, there's a great comment right here. I want to throw it up here real quick. We have to stop relying on day 3 guys will develop and actually spend top tier capital on positions.
Yes.
I completely agree. There's a lot of times with the Chris Ballard era where it's just, we drafted Evan Hull in round 6, so don't worry, he could fill a role for us. Like, no, round 6 is not where you draft guys who could fill a role for you.
You get lucky by hitting on those guys. That's not
right.
It's not intent. That's a roll of a dice. Like, you get to be much more intentional by using first 3 round picks on positions that you really need. Like, they've earned so many excuses from hitting on so many mid to late round guys. It's like, that's not, you didn't go into that thinking Jalen Jones, for example, was your starter of the future. That's not how it went.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you. Use premium capital for big time players. Like, the development thing is nice, but your roster can't be loaded with those players.
Yeah, and premium capital doesn't have to just be the draft. There can be other avenues to upgrade your roster. Now, we will see if the Colts use other avenues to upgrade their roster this offseason. But I would like to remind anyone making decisions that you can do other things rather than just draft players. There is free agency, there is trades, there are other avenues. So we'll see what the Colts do this offseason, guys. But those are our biggest team needs, I think, going into next offseason. Again, we're doing more macro stuff right now because it is the bye week. But going into next offseason, we're looking at running back, tight end, and linebacker especially. We didn't get to some other positions, corner and safety. This roster needs a lot of work. And what's funny is the Colts are, 1 game out of the playoff hunt right now with all that needing work. So we will be back, obviously, talking Colts Broncos next week. The rest of this week, we'll be focusing more on the macro stuff with this team, Chris Ballard, and obviously Anthony Richardson. We do want to thank you guys for making Locked On Colts, though, your first listen today. Now, for your second listen, go find the new Locked On NFL now with 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. And then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get that insider scoop, follow the link in our show notes. And if you guys don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on Twitter. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube or listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings and reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.